Val Flores, After Dark with Dr. Wendy.
Welcome back to the Dr. Wendy Walsh Show on KFI, AM 640. We're live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app. So I was talking about bad boys, and there are all kinds of reasons why women get attracted to bad boys. And there are different kinds.
That's the tag on it, the subtag. Good girls love bad boys, but what happens when you fall for the ultimate bad boy? We're talking to the woman partly responsible for El Chapo's takedown and how her life was affected by falling for bad boys. Did Val love bad boys? Did I miss something? Oh, she did love bad boys.
Kinds of bad boys. They're the ones that just break your heart. They're the ones that come and go, and they have an avoidant attachment style, and they can't really give you emotional intimacy.
Damn.
And then there are the real bad boys.
You gotta relax.
The ones who
Dr.
break the
Walsh.
law. And these guys can be very attractive to women. I have a very special guest in the studio who is actually in the witness protection program, partly because of her steadfast love to a guy very high up in organized crime. And she's about to pay the ultimate price. Now, before I introduce you, what name am I calling you today?
Well, I go by the pseudonym of Olivia Flores, which is a name that I wrote my book under, Cartel Wives. And today it's just me, Val.
You're coming out as Val.
As myself.
Is that the name your parents gave you when you were born?
Yes, it is.
Back to authentic you after everything you've been through.
Yes.
You're the author of the book Cartel Wives. In a nutshell, I will say that your husband worked under El Chapo and was instrumental in bringing El Chapo down. And then the two of you as a team turned yourselves in, and your husband paid the ultimate price, spending 12 years in prison. Set it up for how you stayed in love during this time. You had between you 5 children. What were those 12 years like for you?
Those 12 years, we walked into knowing that when my husband turned himself in and he was going to cooperate with the U.S. government, that he was going to ultimately turn on one of the most powerful cartels in the world.
Keep in mind, before Dr. Wendy Walsh, our own supporter and subscriber, Goth Beauty, was the first one to ask this question, and we got the answer from the horse's mouth. Val gave us the word. What she tell us? She told us they kept it creative. But I just want to give Goth her props for asking this question first. We getting the second-hand answer right here.
Which is the Sinaloa cartel. And Chapo was the head boss of that cartel. So my husband and his twin brother, the Flores twins from Chicago, they decided to change their life and cooperate. And not only did they cooperate, but they helped dismantle the Sinaloa cartel by indicting over 100 different lieutenants, cartel leaders, bosses. And in that cooperation,
I don't know if Val's under the weather, or if she's extra emotional, or her voice there's a little shake in her voice, just the tiniest shake. Could be weather, could be nerves, it happens.
Our goal as a family was to have them turn themselves in, do prison time, and us change our life. And on top of that, they were able to dismantle an organization that they helped build. So
you as a team, you and your husband, were living in Mexico, as I understand it, in a mansion. The money was flowing. Was the initial attraction to a bad boy about the glamorous life for you?
Yes, it was. I grew up, I come from a great, home, loving home. My father's a Chicago police officer.
A police officer?
Damn.
Yes, a Chicago police officer.
Yo, Dr. Wendy, you got to relax. What you yelling about?
27 years. My whole family comes from law enforcement. I went to private school growing up. I came from a great, tight-knit family, very family-oriented. And I just was attracted to these bad boys because, I was attracted to the power, to the money, to all the glitz and glamour.
And we should say your husband was not your first bad boy.
No.
He was your third husband.
He was my third husband. I had this thing for bad boys, this attraction. I always ended up dating the same type of guy. And
are you comfortable disclosing what happened to the first two?
Yes, my first husband went to prison for drug conspiracy because he also was, working with the cartel and selling drugs in Chicago. My second husband, he was murdered, and he was violently murdered, and it was probably one of the hardest things that I ever had to go through in my life was losing him. When he passed away, I made a promise to myself that I would never put myself in that type of situation again, because I was just tired of the pain, the suffering, the trauma that I endured. And so I wanted to be with, somebody that was like my father, which I
with
adored.
a normal job, a guy that just goes 9 to 5 to work.
Exactly. And
no, Nana. Might have felt like a 9 to 5 guy, but you never had a 9 to 5 guy in your life, okay? Never.
You don't pick and choose who you fall in love with. And I fell in love with my husband today. We've been married for 20 years. He is a Flores twin, Jay Flores, who cooperated against Chapo Guzman. And the reason why I fell in love with him is, as ironic as it sounds, is he reminded me of my father. He was gentle, soft-spoken, respectful, polite, kind-hearted. And I didn't even understand what he was doing in the drug trade. I mean, he did not fit your, he did not fit your average drug dealer. He was nonviolent.
All of those things, none of it being a 9 to 5er.
And I knew that in this life, in the drug trade, you're going to either walk away either with a life sentence or you're going to get killed. And I loved him so much that I felt obligated to try to save him. As most women, when they fall in love with somebody, it's like you think, okay, I could change him. I see the good in him. And I saw the good in Jay. And I made it my obligation to try to get him to change his life. And I knew he made me a promise that one day he would change. I never knew that we would end up moving to Mexico and going through all the hardships that we had to endure. I know that, he, of course, was sitting at the highest echelon, at the highest level of drug trafficking that you can possibly imagine, where money wasn't an object and we lived a lavish life. But I'm not here to glamorize that life. I'm here because I want to bring awareness to what that life brings. The money and the glitz and the glamour, what you see on social media, is not what it is. You don't see the trauma, you don't see the murders, you don't see the kidnappings. I mean, at one point... Were
you living in fear?
In fear every day. And it was probably one of the hardest things that we had to go through. But as a family, we made this promise together. And my husband, he kept his promise. And he decided, wow, living in Mexico, sitting at the table with one of the most powerful drug lords in the world, that he was going to give that life up. He had everything, money, power, and he decided to turn his back on the cartel and cooperate with the U.S. government. He was not arrested. He turned himself in and self-surrendered, and we came back to the U.S., and he knew that he was going to spend possibly life in prison because he wanted to change his life for his children and break that cycle. He didn't want to bring our children up into that world.
When we come back, I want to talk about the moment you guys made that decision. What were your other choices? You're listening to the Dr. Wendy Walsh Show on KFI.
Dr. Wendy, boy, she surprised at the police being the father, huh? She says, police?
Now, is there any other way to quit your job as a drug dealer? Tenants. She and her husband, 640, were live everywhere in the iHeartRadio app. Okay, my guest is Val Flores, author of Cartel Wives. She was married to one of El Chapo's top lieutenants. She and her husband made the decision for him to turn himself in and cooperate with the government so that they could get out of the life and have a normal life for their family. Now, is there any other way to quit your job as a drug dealer?
I think that at that high level that my husband and my brother-in-law, his twin brother, Pedro Flores, at that high level that they were at, there was no way they can just walk away from the cartel, especially them being a cash cow. They made millions and millions of dollars. I mean, my husband, his case was $2 billion and thousands of tons of cocaine. So at that level, there's no just walking away, because they'll come in the cartel because you're such an asset, you're so valuable to them, that the day that you think that you're gonna like walk away from that life, they will wipe your whole family out. There's no loyalty. There's no loyalty in that life whatsoever.
So you can't just go to human resources and give your 2 weeks notice.
Dr. Wendy's a little smart ass, huh? Dr. Wendy got a little sarcasm in her.
So you can't just go to human resources and give your 2 weeks notice. You gotta find another way.
Exactly.
So you made a decision together to accept the consequences, and your husband turned himself in. He ended up serving 12 years in prison. You were a dutiful wife during that time, raising children. Can you help me understand what the visitation was like? How often you saw your husband? How could he be a husband and father while he was imprisoned?
Well, the reason why my husband chose to sacrifice and give everything up and want to undo everything, you know, all the harm and everything that he helped create, in order for him to do that, he was walking into a life sentence. So it was a blessing that he received the 14 years that he received. And so
of which he served 12 of the 14 years.
He served 12 of the 14 years, 85%. And we knew exactly what we were signing up for. We knew that it was going to be an uphill battle. We knew what it was going to take for us to continue to be a family.
Was his life in danger while he was in prison?
He was in the witness protection program in prison. So he was moved around to these, you know, from these undisclosed locations around the country that nobody talks about. He was moved around from, you know, across the country, city to city.
And you each time would move with the kids.
I would move
to be
with
near the prison.
Kids, and I would visit him every single weekend. And I was devoted to my husband. We chose to sacrifice, and we chose to do this. And we wanted to make sure that our family stayed together, and it was important for him to have a close relationship with our children, because this is why we did this. You know, we wanted to, you know, break that cycle and not bring our children into this world, into this drug world. And so we were going to do everything possible that we can do as parents, as husband and wife, to be able to, you know, have that close family bond with our children, something that I was fortunate to have growing up. And the only difference was that we were in a visiting room every single weekend for 12 years straight. And
how many hours could you see him?
I could see him 8 hours on Saturday, Sunday, and Monday.
Dang.
And so I practically lived there. But
that's a lot of hours, you know. Some people go, they get their 2 hours in, they hang out. You pulling it, that's a job right there.
When you're sitting in a visitation, we would just get lost in each other. And it's like everything in that visiting room didn't exist. We were just spending quality time.
Were you able to touch each other?
No, we were able to have a very, you know, short kiss when we saw each other, and a kiss when it was time to say goodbye.
Wow.
And we stuck through it. And when he did come home, I mean, I'm
sure Reentry wasn't a cakewalk there.
You know, Reentry, yeah, you think like, okay, well, I'm visiting my husband every weekend, and
especially when the feds show up a couple months later upon Reentry, when, you know what I'm saying, with more drama, more shit, putting guns to the kids' heads, like, you know what I'm saying, that makes it for a unwelcoming family reunion.
I'm spending time with him, and we, you know, talk every day, and we write each other letters, and you feel like it's going to be this like fairy tale at the end. And it's like, it was a transition. It was a transition for myself, of course, because as a mom, you know, I run a tight ship at home, and I'm very strict with my children, and, you know, and my children are used to a routine, and now dad's home. And
he wanted to come home and be the Disneyland dad. Why do we have to have these rules?
Exactly. You know, he just wanted to cater to his children. I mean, he's an amazing husband, an amazing father, very loving. And he just always puts his family first, and just wants the very best for us, and just showers us with love.
Do you worry about your family's safety today?
I do live in fear. However, I choose to come out, and I chose to, write my book, Cartel Wives, to share my story with the world, because I do want people to see the flip side of what that life consists of. And it doesn't have to apply just to the cartel world. That's any one that's, with a bad boy, that's married to somebody, that's with somebody that has, a criminal background. I mean, it's, there's just so much more to share. And I wanted people, I wanted to make myself vulnerable and be transparent about my story. Even if some of my stories were, shameful and I was embarrassed, I felt I needed to share this because you can see the transformation in my life. You can see the growth and how much I evolved as a woman. And I feel that if I didn't go through all of the struggles and all of the hardships and all of the trauma, I wouldn't be who I am today. And, there's a time as you're married and as you're with somebody who is breaking the law, it's like, I feel like, there's something called cognitive dissonance where you sit there and you want to justify, what you're doing wrong. And I would justify it by saying, well, my husband never killed anyone. He was nonviolent.
Listen, and here's the thing, that it's hard to shake that off. That cognitive dissonance, it's hard to shake that off. You know what I'm saying? And people will try to convince you that they're not doing it when indeed they're doing it, and you can see it. You know what I'm saying? But again, it's hard for them to shake off. It's like, listen, you're giving me reasons and reasons. It is what it is. It happened. It's how it is. There's no getting past it, no getting around it. There's some things that we can justify. There's some things that we can't. Doesn't matter if you're trying to justify either one. It's just how it is. So that cognitive dissonance is pretty strong. It's hard to just shake off.
It's not a killer.
That was your rationalization.
That was my rationalization. And it's like, no, that's not okay. What you did was you harmed, what married. And as you're with somebody who is breaking the law, it's like, I feel like, by saying, well, my husband never killed anyone. He was nonviolent. Like, he's not a killer.
That was your rationalization.
That was my rationalization. And it's like, no, that's not okay. What you did was you harmed communities. People died because of drugs. And it was, for you to be able to look yourself in the mirror.
See, that's the part about that argument that annoys me. Oh, it ruined communities and drugs, but America doesn't take any responsibility for that. America puts that shit on Chapo, puts it on the twins, puts it on Val, puts it on your local drug dealer, puts it on the drug addict that dies, puts it on the drug addict that lives. But they don't take no accountability for it. America, that don't get here without you. It don't happen without you. The day you don't want it to happen no more, it stops happening. Chapo didn't do that to the south side of Chicago. America did that to the south side of Chicago and the west side of Chicago. Chapo didn't do that. Drugs didn't do that. Other countries look at America as a whole and say, it's your addictions. You people are slaves to your addictions, and we are. But the whole argument of, the drugs destroy communities, and I destroy communities with the drugs. And yeah, but America got to take a little bit of accountability in that too, and they won't. They refuse. And these highbrow top cops that go after these drug lords and stuff, they don't hold their America accountable either. They just play that they're the soldier for their America. We're going to go get the bad guy, Chapo. We ain't had nothing to do with it. That's bullshit.
And know that, listen, I made a bad choice. I made bad decisions. But at the end of the day, I'm going to take something so negative and make it positive. And I need to, for myself, for my children, for everything that the damage that I've caused, I need to do something that's going to make a difference, that's going to put a dent in the drug trade, that's going to, just try to give back. I mean, today my husband is teaching law enforcement. He's teaching law enforcement
how to catch drug dealers.
I mean, that is not just, you can't just sit there. We can't live in fear and not do something about it. We feel like there's something at the end of the day, we have a purpose in life, and that's to do something positive, to leave something for our children, something that we can make our children proud of the way that I'm proud of my parents.
Val, can you stay for one more segment?
Of course.
When we come back, we're going to talk about what's about to happen to you.
The drama voice of Dr. Wendy.
When we come back, We're going to talk about what's about to happen to you in just a few days. You yourself, mother of 5, is about to go to prison. We'll talk about that when we come back. You're listening to the Dr. Wendy Walsh Show.
That radio voice is hilarious. That was quick. What? That was 2 segments already? And move on to the 3rd segment where she grills her about what's happening right now. Yeah, shaking the voice at the beginning. She seems to have gotten it together in the middle. She's focused on what she's talking about. It's not a big deal. It's just how people read into it. Listen, she's talking about spreading the good word. I don't know how much positive role models change things. I'm hoping that there's a kid in the world that watches Snowfall and sees what happened to Franklin and how Franklin ends up, right? And maybe that kid could somehow relate to how Franklin ends up because maybe his daddy was an alcoholic, right? So he can relate his daddy to what Franklin looked like at the end. And if something good comes out of that for one person, you know, I mean, it's worth it to talk about it. It's worth it to show it off. It's worth it to put it on TV. It's worth it to put on documentaries and podcasts if that can help somebody. You know what I'm saying? So if her story can help people, which the story is a cautionary tale in itself on all ends. Val's story, the twins' story, it's a cautionary tale on all ends. Anything that's done without just glorifying it, but putting in the cautionary tale should come across to at least one person, to somebody. She got a story to tell, so I ain't mad at her telling it.
My guest, Val Flores, author of Cartel Wives. No, not a novel, a real-life story of Val being married to one of the Flores brothers, the team who took down El Chapo. Val, we've talked about why you fell in love with a bad guy. We talked about the glamour. We talked about the pain that you went through. We talked about your family's remorse. We talked about how you want to continue to do good, to keep kids off drugs, to make sure your own kids get highly educated. But now you're going to prison? How did this come about?
You know, our sacrifices came with a very hefty price.
But now you're going to prison? How did this come about?
You know, Wendy, our sacrifices came with a very hefty price. And in that transformation, I made mistakes. You know, my husband, we lived this lavish life in Mexico, and I got accustomed to that lifestyle. It's something...
I happen to know that you lived in a mansion so beautiful that the fountains and swimming pool looked like the Bellagio Hotel.
Yes. Sadly, yes. That's the life that I lived, and it's not something that I like to brag about. It's not something that I want to glamorize at all whatsoever. However, that was the lifestyle that I was living. So when we came back to the U.S. and my husband turned himself in, you know, I was accustomed to living, you know, in these, you know, beautiful mansions and taking these lavish vacations. And so I honestly, when I came back, I thought that I was, you know, downgraded, and I thought that I was living a normal, simple life, which was far from normal still at that point. And I was spending money. And so I got charged with money laundering. You know, I took accountability for my crime, and I am now facing 3.5 years. I will be turning myself in the next few days, and I will be going to a federal prison.
What is that like for you emotionally?
You know, I went through, you know, so much, you know, so many mixed emotions, right? You know, I battled with this, you know, I kind of struggled with taking accountability. And today, of course, I take 100% accountability. But I felt like when my husband and my brother-in-law cooperated against one of the most violent narco terrorists in the world, you know, they had a deal with the government. And in that deal, their family was not supposed to be prosecuted, and we were to have immunity. I did disclose to the U.S. government about the money that I did have, and I felt that that money was immunized. And I felt that even though I was spending that money to live, I did not think that I was, you know, breaking the law. And
you thought you were safe because of the deal that they'd struck.
Exactly. And today I realized that it was wrong and I shouldn't have did it. But at the end of the day, I did believe that I was not committing a crime. or else I would have never did that. And it's hurtful because now I look at my children and I'm
now,
like,
your kids are older. What age range do they range from?
I have 3 that have graduated college already, and 2 that are in high school now.
Oh, so they're still in high school.
Yes. And so when I look at my children, you know, I feel it's the most hurtful thing, and it's very disheartening knowing that this is what I'm doing to my kids, especially them seeing them struggle with their dad being in prison, and seeing my children's, you know, just their pain that was caused by not having dad home. I can't even imagine what it would be like for them not having mom, especially when I've been there their whole life. I was mom and dad their whole life. This is, you know, it's hard to walk away from my children and knowing that, you know, there's going to be a void that can never be filled. And
Are they going to be able to visit you?
Because of my husband's security, and because I'm going to be in the Federal Bureau of Prisons, he cannot step foot into any of the prisons just because of the security issue.
Too dangerous for him.
Too dangerous for him and myself, more so, just because
that would identify you.
Yes, exactly. So,
and your children, they can't come?
Well, because they're minors.
They can't come without him.
No, so I'm basically
Val.
Listen, I think all this identity shit is out the window already. You know what I'm saying? And especially in prison, word gets around like wildfire. 5 minutes, everybody knows who you are, what you are, where you came from. It's more a security of an issue of everybody's in there in the same spot. And, you know, they know who's going to be there and when, and it's just a lot. And them dudes are still on paper, I'm sure. The kid's going to have to figure it out on their own, you know, or they're going to have to be escorted. But I'm saying, like, they're going to be the ones, probably the only ones able to visit.
Enough to walk away, and dangerous for him and myself, more so, just because
that would identify you.
Yes, exactly. So,
and your children, they can't come?
Well, because they're minors.
They can't come without him.
No, so I'm basically signing up to walk away and just be able to do my time and just try to get through it. But I do have a very strong support system, and I am just trying to stay positive, as crazy as it sounds.
As a mother, I just couldn't imagine what you're about to...
No.
Are you terrified?
I am. I feel like I'm just more so about just knowing what it feels like to be alone. I think that's the most like painful thing, and that's what I struggle with the most. And, you know, I just can't be there for my children. And, you know, we work so hard. We honestly thought that when my husband was going to come home from prison, like we were just going to start this new life and it was going to be this fairy tale, and it's far from it. But I do stay positive, and I do try to look at things through a different lens, and I do feel like, you know what, one day we're going to get there, and maybe it's not right now, but I believe that I am today where I'm supposed to be, and there is still a lesson out there that I need to learn. And I am open, with an open mind and an open heart. And I know that whatever that lesson is, I'm going to accept it, and I'm going to continue to grow, and I'm going to continue to evolve, and I'm going to continue to be a better woman.
You know, I've met many people in my life, people who are resilient, people who are hardy, people who have amazing mental health despite trauma. And I feel like you are one of the top on my list. I know what you did was wrong, and people listening will say, you know, some of them are going to say, well, it serves her right, serves him right. Morally judge if you want, okay? You are one of the top.
Those are the same people with a closet full of extravagant bones and skeletons, man. Those same people that be so judgmental, they had it coming. They don't want to tell you about their dopehead grandson. You know what I'm saying? They don't want to talk about that. That's why I don't buy people's bullshit. Like, your high horse means shit to me. Like, nothing. Nothing, because I know what you hiding back there.
Morally judge if you want, okay? This is a human being who's growing.
Yes.
And I often say when I see these situations, there but for the grace of God go I. In any moment, something could happen in our lives that would force us to make a decision based on survival that would break the law. And so, Val, will you Are you able to keep in touch with us?
Come on, man. She should be saying, listen, I'm going to be keeping dibs on you. I'm going to be checking in. And if you don't, then your audience can question you about it. You know what I'm saying? But don't be like, can you reach out to us? Can you let us know what's going on while you're suffering this 3.5 years without your family? Like, come on, relax, Wendy.
To keep up with your story?
I definitely will. I'm one of your biggest fans, so I'm very privileged to be here, and thank you for having me.
And we do want to make sure that we mention your podcast, because you and your husband have an iHeartRadio podcast, correct?
Yes.
What is it called, and how can people find it?
It's Surviving El Chapo, and we have season 1 and season 2 on iHeartRadio or anywhere you get your podcasts.
Surviving
But you
El
can't
Chapo.
make any podcasts from prison, right? They won't let you?
We just finished recording our 2nd season, and we just finished doing our docuseries, so that would be coming out as well.
I happen to know that you're in Los Angeles because they wanted to get you on camera before the federal government took you away.
Exactly, yes.
Val, thanks for telling your story.
Thank you for having me.
And God bless all those children. I hope that they get through this, yet another trauma together, but you guys seem like great
Ain't no
parents.
hope. They'll get
Thanks
through
for
it.
being here today.
Thank
Ain't no hope. They'll get through it. Like, listen, the family will get through it. Val and Vivi get through it. For the shit that they've been through, if this is the last stretch, well then, so be it. They'll get through it. It's just another kick in the ass. So there it is. That was dope. Dope little interview. Quick little interview. Pace was up on that interview. She went from the beginning to the end right away. She didn't ask her many, contentious questions. It was pretty light for the most part. Val sounded a little bit nervous at the beginning, but that's okay. It's expected. But it does suck that the kids can't see them without a parental guardian, and their parental guardian won't be allowed to visit their mother due to the Board of Prisons not wanting him in any of their buildings. It's not a good look. It's going to be a rough one. But with technology, I'm sure they'll figure out FaceTimes and phone calls and all that stuff. But yeah, I thought that the silver lining was, at least she gets to see the kids. Now give me that too. Shit.